The humanistic approach is also known as person-centered psychology, and the two theorists that you need to know about are Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. It's important that you know a lot about one of them and just a little bit about the other. Abraham Maslow is the one we're going to look at today. It's probably the easiest to understand and one that you've possibly heard of before. But we will look at Carl Rogers in another lesson. It is important that you know about him too. So, what are the key principles of the humanistic approach? Well, as I said earlier, it's a person-centered approach. It's based on the idea that human beings have a natural tendency to grow and develop as people, and that each individual has their unique way of perceiving themselves and the world around them, and their position in the world around them. However, it's not a scientific method of studying how people behave, unlike some of the others we've looked at, for example the biological approach. Eysenck and Cattell and Gassel, who say that behaviour is based on our genes, and there's been scientific research that can back that up. This approach is not scientific, and being subjective means that, well, perhaps there are different points of view about it. It says that behaviour is connected to our inner feelings, particularly to our self-concept and our free will. So self-concept, the idea we have about ourselves, and free will, our ability to make our own choices and decisions about what we're going to do or not do. And all individuals, according to these theorists, have a perception of their ideal self, the person they would really like to be, the idea you've got inside your head of the person that you want to be. And the theorists from this approach say that people can achieve their full potential and achieve their ideal self, and when they've reached this, they've reached a position called self-actualization. However, they also say that not all individuals will achieve self-actualization, and in fact sometimes some of us can be at a state of self-actualization and then later on in our lives actually reduce from that state where we're not in our ideal self, depending on the things that happen to us as we go through life. So the learning outcomes then. You need to be able to explain Maslow's theory, which he calls a hierarchy of needs. Later on we're going to look at Rogers' theory of positive self-regard. You've got to be able to apply those theories to health and social care situations. That's what exam questions expect you to do. Understand and use the key terms associated with each theory, and eventually to be able to evaluate the humanistic approach. So, Abraham Maslow. He's known as the father of humanistic psychology and the creator of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is usually shown as a triangle like this. So we have in this triangle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers of what Maslow described as needs. And at the bottom we have the base layers, 2 base layers. Maslow says until each person has fulfilled each series, each level of needs, they can't move on to the next one. And by the time that you've reached the top, you've reached this thing called self-actualization. Your actually ideal self is closer to the real self that you are. This pyramid throws 7 layers of needs. When Maslow first came up with this theory, he only had 5 levels. He added an additional 2 later on. So what are his 7 levels of need then? It starts with the basic needs and continues with the higher needs. He says that we have to have these basic needs met in order to be able to move up to fulfill the higher needs in our life. And even though we've got 2 levels of basic need, he says that in order to develop and grow, the very bottom level must be met first, and so on as you move up the pyramid. You can't move to the next level unless the level below has been met in somebody's life. So what are these levels? When you've achieved them all, you've actually got to the top of the pyramid, self-actualization, which means that your ideal self is close to your actual self. So at the bottom, we've got physiological needs, the basic needs we need to survive. And you're going to look at these later and put these physiological needs onto your own copy of the triangle, which you'll find in your handout. After our physiological needs are met, so things like physiological needs for water, for instance, for food in order to survive, then we need to move on to safety needs, to feel safe and secure, to actually have somewhere that we're going to be able to work and get security of employment and resources, security within our family, so security and safety needs. Next we move up to love and belonging needs. Maslow says that we need to feel a sense of love and belonging we usually get from friendship, family, and from later on in our life, sexual intimacy with a close partner. After those needs are met, we can move on to esteem needs. Actually, our self-esteem, our confidence in ourselves, what we've achieved in our life, and the respect that we have from others, and the respect that we actually give to others to make us have a high level of self-esteem. Once that level's met, Maslow says we can move on to intellectual and cognitive needs. He says that we all have intellectual and cognitive needs. We need to achieve things in our life, but we can't really successfully achieve until the levels below have been established. And next we have aesthetic needs, things that actually make us feel good about our life, that we actually see order and beauty in the world around us. And once we've achieved all of those, Maslow says that self-actualization is achieved. Our ideal self is in line with our actual self as we've moved up, having met all these series of needs in our life. The two that levels that Maslow initially didn't come up with was the aesthetic and the intellectual and cognitive needs. The physiological, safety, love, esteem and self-actualization are the 5 that you must remember and put into any exam questions. And of course, if you can remember intellectual and aesthetic needs, that helps push your marks up further. And here we have some characteristics, all of them from Maslow's 7 layers of needs. What I want you to do is find in your handout the pyramid on page 3 and actually add to each of those pyramids the names of the 7 levels of need, so starting with physiological, moving on to safety, love and belonging, esteem, intellectual and cognitive, aesthetic, and finally self-actualization. And then use those terms on this slide to actually add those into the right levels on your triangle. So for instance, food would come under the first level of basic physiological needs. And then shelter would come under our safety and security needs. Then moving up to love and belonging needs, acceptance from peers. And then as we move up to esteem needs, the respect of others would be important. Finally, moving on to intellectual and cognitive needs, then this acquiring knowledge and understanding would fit in there. And under aesthetic needs, order and beauty. Can you add the rest of those characteristics into the correct level of Maslow's 7 hierarchy of needs? And here you have a copy of, not very good, but you'll probably be able to make it out, of Maslow's 5 basic level of needs. But try filling your paragraph, in your triangle first, without looking at that pyramid. Use the chart that's provided for you with all those characteristics we've just seen in the last slide. So, self-actualization, what does it actually mean? This is what Maslow said we should be aspiring to, or that everybody wants to aspire to. So to find fulfillment and realise our own potential, where we actually understand what our potential is, and actually we can achieve that by working through these 7 layers of needs to reach who we are and to grow and develop in a unique way. So Maslow said we'll either step forward into growth by moving forward and having our needs met, or we step back into safety and don't achieve self-actualisation. Some people can't achieve self-actualisation because of the situation they find themselves in. Something happens to them that means that some of their levels of needs are not being met. So you might see this in exam questions like, discuss how the humanistic approach can be applied in a care setting and to provide individuals with effective help and support. So you'd look at the 7 levels of need and how can they be provided by a particular care setting. Another exam question, Chris, aged 28, served in the army, but whilst he was in Afghanistan he lost both his legs and is recovering before he returned to his home and family. So he's probably lost his job. He certainly can't carry on as a serving soldier with the wounds that he's got, so he's worried about his future and he's become withdrawn. So using Maslow's hierarchy, how could you help Chris go through each of those 7 levels of needs, and what could the staff in the residential home do with Chris to help understand why he's depressed and withdrawn, and to use Maslow's hierarchy to help him move out of that. So there are 2 typical exam questions you'd get. Now what I'd like you to do is to read the handouts that you've got, the humanistic approach, the basics, and the humanistic approach, 3 pages of it, with some tasks in it to do, and some try-it-out exercises at the end to determine where on Maslow's hierarchy you place the people that are on there. And then lastly, when you've done that, you've got some questions on the green handout that you need to complete. And please make sure that you've done everything by Wednesday's lesson. Bring it with you to the lesson. You ought to be able to get most of it done before the end of this lesson. And please bring your finished coursework and your final mark copy on Wednesday to the lesson as well. See you on Wednesday.